Jalen Ramsey announced a couple of weeks ago he wanted to get traded. He thought that they would trade him after last week's Thursday night encounter. So did almost everybody else, which is why our very own Adam Schefter went on Sunday's NFL Countdown and reported, or actually even before that, would get up and stuff like that during the week. He actually reported that there was a particular team that called the league office to inquire if we were to acquire Jalen Ramsey after Thursday, could he still play Sunday? And the NFL had to inform them, you're only allowed to play one game a week. That's how serious folks were about getting him. That's how serious the Jacksonville Jaguars evidently were about moving him. Jalen Ramsey could have sat out that game, that Thursday night game against Tennessee. He could have sat out that game. He could have refused to show up and practice or play. He could have done all of that. But considering the late notice and how things were going, what did Jalen Ramsey do? He still went out on that field for Thursday night's game and balled. He still showed up. Now, I'm not trying to act like there wasn't an obligation to some degree. You are getting paid. You are under contract. You are the starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. What I'm saying is he could have screwed them over. He didn't do that. He did not do that. He showed up on the field, and balled, thinking it was going to be his last game as a Jacksonville Jaguar. This is the NFL. He easily could have got hurt. He could have suffered a season-ending injury. Remember what happened to Earl Thomas last year in Seattle? Remember why he looked over at Steve Carroll and threw up his middle finger? Remember that? Because he wanted his money. The Seahawks wouldn't pay him. He obviously felt Pete Carroll had a lot to do with that. They wanted him to step out on the field and play out his deal, and he got hurt. Season was over.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Concerts and games to the hottest theater shows and more. Vivid Seats has it all. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program today, as advertised. One of the great NFL reporters we have ever seen, working for the worldwide leader, my brother, my buddy, the one and only, Sal Powell himself. There's only one, ladies and gentlemen, Sal Paolantonio. What's going on, big time? How are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Stephen A. It's so great to join your show. Thank you very much.
It's always great talking to you. Sal, what the hell is going on with the Philadelphia Eagles, man? Put it in perspective. And if anybody would know, it would be you.
Well, I think three things. You had injuries at the wide receiver position, not an excuse, but you had inexperienced players that didn't make plays. If you're on a 53-man roster in the National Football League, you need to catch the football. That's first and foremost. And you need not to turn the football over. Everybody knows Miles Sanders had a fumbling problem at Penn State. Well advertised. It hasn't been corrected, and that's a major issue because he is the guy they have chosen be the bell cow back. And you need one if you're going to keep Carson Wentz healthy and whole and upright for 16 games. But suddenly he has become very, very problematic with the ball, and that's a big issue. So they'll get Alshon Jeffrey back tonight, and that's an important addition. He'll calm things down a little bit. I'll tell you this, Stephen A. If the Eagles do not turn the football over tonight, I think they can win the football game. I think they can win.
But you're worried that they won't be able to avoid turning over the football, particularly going against this Packers defense. Is that correct?
Well, I love what Mike Pettin has done with the defense. And everybody plays defense differently, but Pettin's DNA is right out of Baltimore, right out of Rex Ryan. What you're seeing are multiple fronts and multiple coverages behind it. They have a terrific young safety, a rookie, Darnell Savage. He has become, I don't want to use this term loosely, but he has become the Ed Reed of this defense. He's an extremely smart young man, an extremely tough young man. Pettin has put a lot of trust in him. Mm-hmm. After 3 games, they're giving up 11 points per game. So, they're doing things correctly. As far as the Eagles are concerned, defensively tonight without Ronald Darby, I don't know what Jim Schwartz is going to do. I have a recommendation for him.
You faded for a second. You said you don't know what Jim Schwartz is going to do, and then you faded, Sal.
I think I have a recommendation for him, Stephen.
All right, what's the recommendation? What's the recommendation?
I think he's got to play deep. I think he's got to don't worry about Aaron Rodgers holding the football, because eventually the rush will get there. You've got to play deep and keep everything in front of you. Don't let him get the lightsaber out and carve you up like Obi-Wan Kenobi, which he can and will do. So don't be afraid to allow him to hold the ball, become impatient, as he is wont to do sometimes, but keep the plays in front of you. Don't be giving up these big plays, because they're going to be shorthanded in their secondary. Russell Douglas, he doesn't run well. Avonte Maddox, he's not as big as you would like. Sidney Jones has not lived up to the billing. So they have to keep the ball in front of them and don't turn it over offensively.
Sal Paolantonio right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. I actually think that Carson Wentz has been taking too many hits. I'm talking about too much criticism. That's what I mean by that, Sal Pal. I find him scrambling out of the pocket, holding on the ball a little bit longer, trying to extend plays. I think the 61% completion percentage is a misnomer. Dudes have been dropping passes. They've got 11 drops on the season, which leads the NFL. I think those things are the things that we need to be talking about, as opposed to the play of Carson Wentz. How have you felt watching Carson Wentz now compared to what you've seen his first 2 years in the National Football League?
Yeah, well, first of all,
3.
you and I could not agree more. Mm-hmm. Their drops are at a historic level. His drop rate percentage was 19.4% against the Lions. Mm-hmm. That's the worst drop rate he has ever suffered in his 4-year career, and the worst of an Eagles quarterback since 2006. Too many drops get your completion percentage down, and if you have inexperienced wide receivers not getting open, they double-team Zach Ertz. But this is on the coaching staff a little bit too here now, Stephen A. Matt Patricia comes out of the Bill Belichick school. They're going to take away your best offensive option. That was Zach Ertz on Sunday. They double-teamed him. He was not a factor for more than half the game. And that forced him to throw to guys who were not open and inexperienced and who dropped it. So it's definitely not Carson Wentz's fault. He's holding on to the ball for a reason. Now, in the Atlanta game, which I covered on Sunday Night Football, the offensive line of the Eagles was completely outmaneuvered by the games and the stunts that they played in Atlanta. And I just thought that they were not prepared at the beginning of that game for what the Atlanta defensive front sent their way. So I don't blame Carson Wentz, but I do blame the coaching staff for not allowing this team to be ready, especially in the first quarter, and especially not having an answer. Everybody knows Matt Patricia comes right out of the Bill Belichick DNA. You know what he's going to do. He beat Matt Patricia in the Super Bowl. So how could he not be ready?
Sal Paolantonio right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Sal, what were you making when the reports came out months ago about the relationship that Carson Wentz had with his players compared to the relationship that Nick Foles had with those players? This is at a time when people were speculating, where do you go from here? Do you hold on to Nick Foles, let go of Carson Wentz? Do you hold on to Carson Wentz, let go of Nick Foles? Do you keep them both and just convince Nick Foles, you pay him and you overpay him for a backup knowing what he could mean to your franchise, but you still hold on to him anyway? What did you make of all the noise that was being made at that particular moment in time about Carson Wentz?
I'm closer to the team than anybody.
Yes, I do.
And that's a complicated question with a pretty complicated answer, but I'm going to boil it down to this.
Okay.
Carson Wentz is not Nick Foles. They're two different people. They handle their business differently. Carson Wentz is intense. He's in your face. He wants to improve and get better and do things his way all the time. Nick Foles is a guy who will let the game in life and on the football field come to him a little bit more. They're different personalities. So people who wanted Carson Wentz to be like Nick Foles, it's not going to happen. Some of the reporting about Carson Wentz being quote unquote, and here is the key word that was used, selfish, to me is inaccurate. I've never seen a more selfless person or player than Carson Wentz. He gives back to his teammates. He gives back to the community. He's coachable. Is he intense? Yes. Is he selfish? No.
And so with that being said, when people say stuff like the offensive line, if you watch them work and you see the way that they blocked for Nick Foles, but when it comes to Carson Wentz, they block differently. These are the kind of things, you've seen the kind of things that have been said. What's your response to that?
That's insanity. Here's the reason why they block differently for Nick Foles. They don't have to block for Nick Foles. Nick Foles gets the ball out of his hands in Tom Brady's neighborhood. The ball is out in 2.4 seconds. Nick Foles and Tom Brady and Drew Brees are 1, 2, and 3 in getting the ball snap to release out of your hands. That is how you stay employed as an offensive lineman, better than anything else. Oh, my quarterback's getting rid of it. I don't got to block for 2.5 seconds. Okay, I'm good. Carson Wentz is not in that neighborhood yet for a lot of different reasons. Not as many RPOs. He doesn't have that quick trigger release. He's had some injuries with his wide receiver, so the ball has to stay in his hands longer. There's lots of different reasons. Again, he's not Nick Foles. And so when people say, well, the offensive line did a better job, of course, they did. The offensive line looks great. Nate Solder goes to the Giants. He doesn't look so good when Eli's holding the ball. Nate Solder's a world beater when he's Tom Brady getting rid of the football. Come on.
Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur trying to figure things out in Green Bay. What have you seen from their offense? How much of a problem do you anticipate they could be for the Eagles tonight on Thursday Night Football?
Well, they haven't been running the ball the way they would like to. They've had a lack of balance. You know, they have the fewest points scored of any division leader in the NFL right now. So if the Eagles with Kamau Grugier-Hill coming back at linebacker, that will help them. If they can shut down the run, the whole game is going to be decided with Aaron Rodgers on third down with the ball in his hands. Okay? So if they can do a good job of getting him into third and long by shutting down the run and then keeping the play in front of him and allow him to hold on to the ball until he becomes frustrated and makes a mistake, which is rare. I get that. It's rare. It's home. It's a big if, but the whole game will be decided. Don't give him a short field by turning the ball over. When he has the ball on third down in his hands, what is he doing with it? What's the down and distance? That's the game that Jim Schwartz has to play tonight at Lambeau Field.
Should we be looking a little bit more, since so many complaints have been aimed in the direction of Carson Wentz, obviously to a lesser degree, the defense in the secondary, and we understand that is about Jim Schwartz. But on the offensive side of the ball, the absence of a running game, seeing the level of success it's generated for the Dallas Cowboys, who clearly have a running game. When you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, although they're 2 years removed from winning a Super Bowl for the first time ever in its franchise history, considering what was said about them last year, considering what is being said about them thus far this year, when do we look at Doug Peterson?
Oh, I don't think we look at Doug Peterson for a while.
Okay.
So let's look at – I think that if you want to point any finger, I think you have to point it at the front office. The running back position, and here's the word I'm going to use, and I have used it before, has been mismanaged. Last year, the Eagles' running game was in Detroit. LeGarrette Blount. I don't know why they didn't keep LeGarrette Blount. It was only a couple of bucks, a couple $1 million. It was easy to keep him. He was a great team leader, and he was a guy – they don't win the Super Bowl without LeGarrette Blount. They don't win the Super Bowl without LeGarrette Blount, and last year they missed him. for so many reasons, on the field and off, in the locker room. He was important to them, and they let him go. Now, they traded for Jordan Howard, and Jordan Howard, everybody knows, is a north-south runner, and the Eagles have a zone-blocking, zone-run scheme. And they are not fitting together right now. So you go back and you watch them on film, and that's what we've been doing at the NFL Matchup Show with Greg Cosell and Matt Bowen, and I know you love the show.
Yes.
And just looking at what the Eagles do offensively, there are holes to be had. There is daylight, but Jordan Howard's trying to figure out how to get there, maybe missing some things, doesn't have quite the vision laterally. That's why Miles Sanders, who has a little bit more juju in the hole, has a better jump cut, has shown his propensity to do that and the ability to do that and a history to do that Howard just doesn't have. He's just more of a sort north-south guy. It's not fitting right now. You got to look at scheme. You got to look at fit. How does the talent fit into the scheme? Coaches coach against coaches. Coaches coach different players different ways. And if there's no fit there, then, you're going to have a problem. And right now, you add it all up. Injuries to the wide receivers, offensive line not ready against Atlanta, running game not really helping out. You've got no answer to Zach Ertz being double-teamed against the Detroit Lions. And you can't blame Carson Wentz for any of that.
So who you got winning tonight's game?
Listen, if the Eagles don't turn the ball over, they'll have a chance to win this game. But, you're going into Green Bay. They don't lose in Green Bay on Thursday night. The Eagles have won in a short week under Doug Peterson. I was in that Eagles locker room, Stephen A., yesterday. That is an angry, embarrassed football team to a man. And I expect them to come out firing and hot tonight. Watch the first quarter. The whole game will be decided on third down, especially in the first quarter. If Aaron Rodgers is clicking in the first quarter and the Eagles don't have an answer, then this is a problem. But they cannot turn the football over and expect to win this game.
Sal Paolantonio, always appreciate you, my buddy. Miss you, man. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, sir.
Take it easy. The one and only Sal Paolantonio right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Back with more in a minute to close out the show. Don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. We all love a night out.